Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I've got no rhythm. It's been a pretty shitty week here, so I'm going to talk about books instead. I have a couple of articles in The Guardian I wanted to point out to you because they were good fun. So one of them was about dating people who like books, and it's called "I Couldn't Be With Someone Who Liked Jack Reacher. Can Our Taste in Books Help Us Find Love?" It's kind of cute. Could I be with someone who liked Jack Reacher? I read the first Jack Reacher, and it was so intolerably awful. But I'm not sure it would put me off a person, but there may be some red lines or red flags books. You know, a lot of people say that men who read David Foster Wallace, that's a massive red flag on dating sites. And I kind of get that, even though I kind of like David Foster Wallace, but still maybe red flag. But it's a good article, and I'll link to it below. There's some other great stuff as well. There's an extract from Deborah Levy's third part of her is it autobiography? Is it memoir? I'm not sure what it is, but I haven't read any of them, but I bought the first one based on some recommendations that I got from you lot in BookTube. What else is out there? There's a new Alison Bechdel book is being reviewed. And then I want to talk about, there's a review of a new book by Michael Lewis called Pandemic. And I've read a few books by Michael Lewis. I thought I'd talk about them quickly because he's always good value. If you don't know who Michael Lewis is, probably might be most familiar. Back in the day, he wrote Liar's Poker, but there's kind of resurgence around Moneyball, which is just a terrific read. You don't have to know anything about baseball in order to get a kick out of Moneyball. It's a really, really good read. It's non-fiction about how the way that teams were built in the American baseball league changed completely when they started looking at stats rather than instincts of coaches and people who went out trying to scout new players. And it focuses on one team that changed the way they do things and how the impact that had on the whole sport. It's also a great movie, well worth your time, with Brad Pitt playing Billy Bean, and a terrific movie, terrific book. My wife, who had no interest in reading this, or certainly no interest in baseball, she loved that movie very much, and so I highly recommend both. And then his next book after Moneyball was The Blind Side, which also made it into a movie. This was the movie that Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for. Another sports movie. This is now about what the Americans call football and what the English people call American football, and it starts off talking about a particular position and why that's important, and how that position and the way that they find the players to suit that position changed football in the 70s and 80s, I think. Lawrence Taylor, and then it focuses into a human story of one particular player, which is what the film is all about, Michael Oher, and it's just, again, a terrific read. Michael Lewis has a way with an anecdote. He's just absolutely bang on entertaining. This is just sports writing of the highest caliber, up there with Moneyball. They make a great pair if you have any interest in fine sports writing. But he started off as a financial journalist, or I think he started off in Wall Street originally, and so he made his name as a financial journalist, Michael Lewis. And another book also made into a movie, The Big Short, which does as good a job of explaining exactly what happened in Wall Street and how American taxpayers ended up paying for it. Also a great movie, and the book is thoroughly entertaining. And then one of my favourites of his books is The Undoing Project, which is about the friendship and the professional partnership of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, two Israeli I don't even know what you call them, geniuses. Kahneman won the Nobel Prize for economics, but started out as a social scientist. And this is a story of their friendship as well as some of the work that they've done. The key text would be Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, which is just an outstanding 10-star, top of the tree life-changing read. And this is a book more about the friendship between Tversky and Kahneman, and it's just a joy. And then his last book I didn't love, The Fifth Risk. I couldn't even tell you, it doesn't really come together. It was a short book, maybe more of a contractual obligation than a book, so wasn't keen on The Fifth Risk. But Michael has got a new book about the pandemic, and that's something I am really keen to check out. So that's my list. Those are my things in the what else was in the Guardian. I think they just announced today that Raven Leilani won the Dylan Thomas Prize for Luster. So still haven't got to it. Looking forward to it, but that's a sort of roundup of what's going on. In terms of the books that I finished this week, let's look at where I was when last we spoke. Last Friday, I had just started Kim Jiyoung, Born 1982, by Cho Nam-jun. I read the first chapter and I thought, this is going to be great, because it's kind of intriguing, and there's the subsequent 140 odd pages just didn't work for me in any shape or form. This is really disappointing. It's barely a novel. This was pitched as the key South Korean novel about the Me Too movement and about the patriarchy in South Korea, and this was a sort of huge bestseller over there, and forcing people to address pay disparities between men and women, and just the way and chauvinism and just general misogyny in South Korea, and all that is real, and that's all great, but as a novel, this does not work at all. There is no story. There is no attempt at following the form of a novel in any way. It jumps around and just tries to lay on the facts of the rottenness of patriarchal South Korean society, and of course it has parallels in every patriarchal society outside of South Korea, but it disguised as some kind of story that we're supposed to follow Jiyoung's life from a child and the family and her parents and her sister and her brother, and all the special treatment that's given to the younger brother, and her mother having to go out to work, and all this is kind of, we're supposed to believe this is a story, but then it's the clumsiest, most inelegant way of hammering home facts about disparity and misogyny. And so nothing is actually about Jiyoung's life. These are all sort of squared off anecdotes from reality about, she went to work and found out that her male colleague was getting paid more than her, which is, I'm not poo-pooing that fact. That's a horrific reality, not just in South Korea, around the world, but it's presented in the most clinical terms. There's no attempt at fictionalizing it. And then, to make it worse, immediately underneath there's a little number and a footnote explaining which news article this comes from, that the pay disparity is 15%. It's so clumsy. It's just sort of weak journalism that's been tried to be portrayed as fiction to make you read it. I really didn't get on with this. Everything it's saying about society is super important, but it's trying to make it seem like there is a fictional story here, and it's just a piece of long-form journalism, clumsily written with a sort of Portnoy's complaint ending, which doesn't work at all. Really weak and disappointing read, I'm afraid, for me. Down with the patriarchy. After that, one of the last of these graphic novels that I'd bought, or comic books or collected editions that I bought back in August. I've been trying to parcel them out because I'm running out of them, and they're always good palette cleansers. But this is, I don't know if you can get this in the glare, this is Dark Knight's Metal, the deluxe edition. I think I paid £6-7 for this. So this went on sale originally for $30, but I got this on eBay cheap. And if you know anything about comics, you know that one of the things that both Marvel and DC, and then the other comic book companies also, have been very guilty of over the years is these big crossover events. like how the Marvel Cinematic Universe has 23 movies over 10, 12 years. Every summer, the big companies, Marvel and DC, put together events that cross over multiple comics. And in many ways, they are just the crassest attempt to make you buy more comics than you usually would. Because if you want the whole story, you can't just read it in Batman. You have to read Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Justice League and Green Lantern, because the story continues from one to the other. Or if they don't do that, they say, well, you don't have to read those parts, but if you want the full story, and they've been doing this for years, and some of them are good. So the original Civil War, which was made into one movie, the second Captain America movie was Civil War, I think. So Civil War was a very interesting story that played out over multiple titles and multiple comic issues. But I think there is a coherent story there in the main Civil War miniseries. And DC do these things as well, starting way back with the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and taking us up to the middle day, where they reduced the multiverse into one single universe. And since then, they've done everything to go back in all the other directions. It was about tidying up the DC universe, and they've just spent decades messing it up again, or thereafter. And now we have Metal. So in the opening essay, Scott Snyder talks about how much fun a comic book event is, because you can be crazy and introduce lots of new ideas and see how they impact all the different characters in your universe, and it's just a great fun time for everyone to come together. It's not. It's a marketing exercise. It's a moneymaker, and this is a very silly event. I haven't read any of the other mini-series that went around Metal. I didn't read the Road to Metal or the After Metal or the Heavy... It's just rubbish, silly rubbish. I give it credit for embracing the silly, so that one of the missing elements that the baddie needs to bring together the secret metals of the universe that are going to give them control over all the blah 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 blah. And the final element they need is Batmanium. I mean, it's rubbish, weak rubbish, but kind of boldly done and beautifully. Greg Capullo, who started on Spawn, as far as I know, and did that whole Batman series that I'm working through with Scott Snyder. He's a fine artist. You've got these crazy Joker creatures and Batmans from all different dimensions and monsters of all. I don't know. It's just, and then they go to hell, and then there's a giant Hawkman. And then, fairly unforgivably, there's an appearance of Dream, of the Endless, the new Dream, not the old Dream that you know from the comic books, but after Morpheus is taken by the Fates at the end of the Neil Gaiman's 75 issue series Sandman, he's replaced by a new avatar of Dream, who is Daniel, and we see Daniel there and with his green eyes. I mean, once you put him in the main universe, you're kind of lost. It's just rubbish. Yeah, really, really not very good. And I've probably spoken about it more than I should. Great artwork, bonkers story, very silly, and really not worth your time. And after that, I needed a palette cleanser for my palette cleanser, and I read the second one. With some of the same characters, a guy called Stuart Neville. So the first book was called The 12, and I think in America it was published as The Ghosts of Belfast. So this is set in Northern Ireland, and that first one was, the 12 was about a hitman who starts seeing things. He's a former Northern Irish heavy hitman, and he starts seeing all the ghosts of the people that he had damaged in his time, and goes out to try and get some kind of redemption, and it was messy and bloody, and it was okay, and I must have at the time liked it enough to order the second one, and I would have picked this up secondhand for a couple of quid. I picked this up almost 3 years ago, and I had put it off, and I just decided that I'd read another one of these, and so this Irish hitman who did all this thing and managed to get away, really there's not much you can do with his story. He's kind of invincible. There's this kind of supernatural, or is there, element where he sees things, but manages to save himself. Anyway, that was all a bit nuts. This is sort of fairly nuts and bolts, and straightforward. Actually, what it does here, it moves on from that hitman who sees ghosts. It brings him in, but only as one strand, and so this is focused on another one of the points of view in this is of an Northern Irish policeman who is a Catholic in the mostly Protestant Northern Irish police force. So we've seen that kind of play out before in Adrian McKinty's books. If you've read those, they're absolutely terrific. I'd say probably smarter and just a little more sophisticated than this. But this was fairly satisfyingly violent and nasty, and there's a bad guy and a couple of good guys, and then a couple of people whose morality we're not entirely sure of, and it all comes together in a sort of fairly bloody, fire-drenched and brutal conclusion. It was okay. This was a good palate cleanser to my less good palate cleanser. Will I read another one? So now the series, when you look at the series, it's called the Jack Lennon. That's the cop. It's all four of them are called the Jack Lennon books, even though Jack Lennon doesn't appear in the first one at all. The first one is all about the hitman Jerry Fegan. Do I want to read more of Jack Lennon? I don't know. Probably won't go out of my way to pick up another one, but that was okay, and it's done. It goes on the shelf. And then it leads you to where I'm reading now, which is the book that I hauled a few weeks ago. I'm going to start the Dutch House, and I'm going to get through that this weekend. And then also it's, Monday is Shavuot, Sunday night. So I've got tomorrow Shabbat for a lot of reading, and then Sunday is a half day, and then Sunday night to Monday evening is the festival of Shavuot. So I'll do another a big chunk of reading then, and that's where I'm at. Hope you have a great weekend. Hope you're all staying safe. Take care. Bye.